Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Welcome back to our Entitled People series, where you'll hear stories about people who truly believe they can do no wrong and should always get what they want. Today, we've got 7 stories. The first story, a Karen goes on private property and decides to alter the landscaping to her liking. The second story, OP describes his airplane flight where he encounters a wild Karen. And the third story, I'm laughing because it's ridiculous, where a super entitled airplane passenger demands compensation because somebody literally passed away on his flight and made him late. My friends, I hope you enjoy the stories today. Hit that subscribe button for future stories if you're not subscribed already. Let's dive in. This happened a while ago in a small town in the middle of nowhere. It's a community-built network of mountain bike trails that the community helps maintain and build to enjoy. The trails started in my cousin's backyard, and before, he was the only one involved, so the trails were very small. But soon, he got many of his neighbors involved to help maintain and build more trails, and it became a decent-sized network. Since it's his private property, he requests that people ask before they go on his trails, and he lets most people in. One day, we wanted to ride on a downhill trail with many cool features, like jumps, logs to hop over, a homemade skinny bridge made out of wood planks, drops, and so much more. But on this particular day, there was a sign planted at the entrance of the trail saying, "Reserved for Karen and her family." At first, we thought this was very entitled and rude, just barging onto his property and blocking it off from the owners. But then, we saw the family with shovels and wheelbarrows, and we realized they were helping us maintain the trail. Fair enough, it could use some maintenance, so it was kind of them to be helping without being asked, but little did we know, this was the complete opposite. We spent the next few hours riding the other trails and finally decided that we should give them some beers for helping us out. So, we returned to my cousin's house, he grabbed some from the fridge, and we headed back. Up past her sign we started to go down, but Karen ran up to us and started yelling. She said, "Hey, why are you going past that sign? It's clearly reserved for me and my family." My cousin said, "Oh well, we just wanted to give you some beers for helping us maintain the trail. I actually own—" She interrupted, "No, it's reserved for me. Get out!" My cousin began telling her that he owns this and that she's on private property. Karen said, "No, this is public. My kid and friends come here all the time." Now this could be true. My cousin has allowed many school children to ride on his trails after school. But he told her, "This is my private property. I do let many people ride my trails as long as they help out sometimes, and I certainly do not remember inviting you. Please leave." Karen responded, "Well, I did help you with your trails. Look, I child-proofed them." She pointed to the trail, and we suddenly realized what she and her family had done. They had flattened out all the jumps, removed the logs, removed the skinny bridge, along with everything else that makes a mountain bike trail fun. It became nothing but a slight downhill path. Not to mention she cut down several trees. Her kid was also there, riding down the lame hill with a regular Walmart bike. An entire summer's worth of work was just turned into a beginner-friendly bike hill with nothing special. My cousin then said to her, "Excuse me, but what in the world have you done to my trail?" She replied, "Don't be yelling at me. You're the one who built a hazardous merry-go-round." My cousin told her, "Yeah, that's the whole point of mountain biking, to do fun things like this. But without permission, you went on my property and broke things. What's wrong with you?" Karen responded, "I am making it safe for the kids." My cousin then told her, "Okay, I'm going to call the cops." At this point, she realized how foolish she was and decided to back off, never to be seen again. A part of me wanted this to escalate for a better story to tell, but we never ended up calling the cops. It took several days to get it back to its original form, but it'll never be as fun. OP's cousin definitely should have called the cops. If somebody came onto my property and started messing around, altering my land, I'd be furious. #I'm very tough. I'm just kidding, guys, no beating up people, but that's some wild level of entitlement, altering a whole mountain bike path to make it safe for her kid to ride on. She should have just kept to the sidewalk in that case. But hey, entitlement, right? Next story. This story happened back in December, just after school let out for the winter. I'm a teacher, and my girlfriend is a grad student, so when she was done for the semester, I took a few days off from work and joined her for a vacation down to Virginia, where her parents live. This was the first time I was going to meet the whole family, and this is looking like a pretty serious relationship that might go all the way. So, we flew there from Newark on the United Express service, which is essentially a tiny tin can of an airplane where tall people can barely stand up. The seats are arranged 2 on one side and 1 on the other. Going there, we booked a 2-seater together, and the flight went off without a hitch. The trip was great, her family and I got along. Unfortunately, I had to fly back alone as she planned to stay a few weeks with her parents before school started again. Now, I don't like flying, and I especially do not like flying solo. I'm also not a great sleeper at the best of times, so sleeping on a plane is out. I booked myself a single seat on the left for privacy, bought a decent amount of reading material, and assumed I would just be able to keep myself distracted for the 90-minute flight, or so I thought. So, I've settled into my solo seat near the front of the standard seating, and the old man behind me has popped a few pills and immediately fallen asleep. I'm distracting myself with magazines when I hear a bellow of, "It'll fit just fine!" Karen storms onto the plane, pulling her kid with one hand and an oversized wheeled suitcase with another. She proceeds to huff and puff while shoving it into the overhead compartment, despite all of us being told that the baggage space is limited and we should check all the hard suitcases. She eventually crams it in, sits down with her kid, and the flight takes off. As soon as we get going, I turn on my overhead light and get back to reading. About 5 minutes later, I'm snapped out of my distraction, and she says, "Sir, sir." I answered, "Yes?" She said, "You need to turn your overhead light off. My daughter and I are trying to sleep." I told her, "I'm sorry, but I want to be able to read during the flight, and it's only 6:30. She said, "Excuse me? I'll have you know that my daughter and I have been traveling all weekend. We're both exhausted, and the least you can do is be a little accommodating. You're the only person on this flight with their light on." So, I looked around, and it's true. I am the only one with the light on. I told her, "Sorry about that, but I can't really sleep on flights. I really need this light." Karen said, "Okay, that's enough of that." She got up out of her seat, quickly turned my light off, and sat back down with a smug smirk. I quickly turned it back on and said, "Do not touch my light again." She responded, "Oh, really? We'll see what the attendant has to say about this." With another one of her trademark smirks, she hit the flight attendant call button about 5 times in a row. My stomach immediately clenched, as I'm already nervous on flights, and any interaction with authority figures can make it worse. This is so absurd, but I decided to see where it goes. I got back to reading as we waited for the flight attendant to get there. She showed up, a young woman who looked like she'd had a long day, and it was about to get longer. The flight attendant said, "Can I help you, ma'am?" Karen replied, "Yes, you can. This rude man won't turn off his overhead light even after I told him how tired my daughter and I are. We have to fly to Cleveland tonight after this flight, and I think we deserve a little peace." The flight attendant said, "Well, ma'am, everybody can use their light as they want. There's nothing stopping him from using his overhead lighting, but let me see what I can do." The flight attendant turned to me and said, "Sir, would you mind turning out the light so she can get some rest?" I told the flight attendant, sorry, I told her I bought a solo seat so I could read. Karen pulled the woman aside, but I could still hear her, and she said, "Can't you just tell him to turn it off? I'm pretty sure he has to do what you say." The flight attendant said, "Ma'am, we have blindfolds that you can use for you and your daughter to block out the light if you want." Karen replied, "No, those are probably filthy." The flight attendant began to tell her, "No, they're individually wrapped," and Karen said, "Listen, why are you making this so hard? Just tell him to turn it off. You're the flight attendant, and you have authority over these people." The flight attendant then turned to me and asked, "Sir, would you be willing to move seats so she's not bothered? We have some empty seats there." She pointed to a seat near the back next to another man. I told her, "I'm catching a train right after I get off, and I'm kind of in a rush, especially as some people are likely going to be taking a while to get their luggage out." Karen then said, "How dare you? You look like you belong in the back of the plane. Just get back there and stop bothering us now." I was kind of casually dressed, had a 4-day beard, my hair was scruffy, and, "Oh yeah, my skin is tan, and I am not white." We all know what she really meant. I responded, "Nice racism, Karen." She then said to me, "You know what I meant, you punk?" She turned to the flight attendant and said, "Are you going to do something about this or not? You're depriving my daughter of her much-needed sleep. Now, you go and talk with someone with the authority to do something about this and get this punk out of my sight, or I'll have your job." The flight attendant then looked at me and said, "Sir, it's not a long flight, would you please?" I told her, "I'm sorry, but I don't have a problem here." She does, and she's making the entire flight miserable. I don't think I have to inconvenience myself to make her happy. Looking defeated, the flight attendant ran up to the front of the plane to talk to what I assumed were people in charge. Karen snarled at me and said, "You're in for it now. You'll be on the no-fly list after this." The flight attendant returned and immediately turned to me, and Karen's eyes went wide with excitement. The flight attendant said, "Sir, would you be willing to move up 4 rows? You'll be closer to the front that way, and it's another single seat." She didn't say it, but I knew this was the extra legroom section that you pay a little bit more for. I said, "Yeah, sure, I think that's fine." Karen then said, "Wait, he gets a better seat? Why didn't you offer that to us?" "There's only single seats available up there, ma'am." Karen continued, "This is ridiculous. He ruined our flight and then he gets rewarded? When we get to Newark, I will be informing your boss and the authorities, and you both will get exactly what you deserve." At that moment, an old woman in the next row over loudly said, startling the entire flight, "For God's sake, lady, shut up!" So yeah, she shut up after that, and I moved to my new seat. I wish I could tell you that this was some luxurious first-class seat, but this was a crummy short-haul flight in a tin can. I had maybe 2 more inches of legroom, and I got my half cup of soda and my tiny bag of pretzels a few minutes early, but I was far away from Karen. When the flight landed, I quickly grabbed my bag and got off, sneaking a look back as she held up the entire line, trying to wedge her suitcase free from the tiny overhead compartment. We were about 20 minutes early to New York, so I got a bagel before catching my train. I saw Karen barreling past, dragging the suitcase and the kid behind her, yelling that this airport is full of idiots. She caught sight of me at the bagel place and said, "You are a horrible person." I just chuckled and gave her a little wave. It ended without any police property damage or assault, but it certainly did nothing to make me appreciate flying more. My goodness, guys, this story is absolutely wild. I kind of feel that both parties made it harder on themselves, though. But with that said, you can't let Karens win, right? That's how they become stronger. And speaking of being strong, the next story, another airplane passenger has a super strong sense of entitlement. Next story, I work for one of the largest airlines in the world. I'm a reservations agent, and my department handles reservations for frequent flyer members who have status. This event occurred about 5 years ago. One evening, I received a call from a passenger demanding compensation because the flight arrived later than scheduled. The cause of the delay determines if compensation is offered, what form of compensation would be issued, and how much. While searching through the reservation to determine the answers to these questions, I discovered that the reason the flight was delayed was because the captain had a heart attack mid-flight and passed away. The pilot had a wife and, I believe, 3 children waiting for him at home, so it was heartbreaking that he died so young. Because of the tragedy, the flight was diverted to another city to allow officials to remove his body from the plane. So, this passenger called, demanding compensation for the inconvenience of his flight. He kept yelling that he had been delayed or completely missed his business meeting. Even after I explained the reason for the delay, he still felt that he should get some kind of refund or voucher, solely because of the inconvenience. He was saying that we could have just continued to the destination and then taken the pilot's body off the plane. He continued to say a lot of ignorant and cold-hearted things, always insisting that we inconvenienced him and that he's entitled to compensation. I eventually lost my patience with him and told him, "Sir, I'm sorry that you were inconvenienced, but this man was barely 40 years old with a wife and kids. They feel having to unexpectedly plan and pay for his memorial service to be quite inconvenient as well. There was nothing we could have done to prevent this." He then continued to try and argue and wanted to speak to corporate. He told me he would not hang up without a coupon or a voucher. He also threatened that he would post on social media about the horrible customer service and the flight delay. I basically told him, "Good luck with that," and I ended the call. My friends, this man definitely needs to learn some compassion. I'm pretty sure a good majority of people out there would have definitely understood the situation and just moved on. But to call and ask for compensation, be denied, be told that story, and still want something out of it, definitely makes this man a terrible person. But that, my friends, is entitled people. They don't care about anybody. Next story. So, here's the deal. I drink a lot. I drink privately, and I would never drink and drive. I'm quiet and respectful, I have a job, I have friends, I have a nice apartment, and I've never hurt anyone. So, most nights, I like to chill on my couch with a drink or 10. Thus, I often walk into my apartment building with a case of beer or whatever I decide to poison my body with that night. Many of those nights I've run into a certain middle-aged woman on the elevator who we'll call Karen. Well, yesterday I got a phone call from my landlord. Here's how the conversation went. I said, "Hey Ray, what's up?" He replies, I got something awkward to tell you." "Okay, what is it?" "So, someone made a complaint about you." I asked, "For what?" My landlord says, "So, another tenant called to say that you're an out-of-control alcoholic, and you always walk into the building carrying alcohol, and she wants you out of the building." I'm baffled and just say, okay, There was a long pause, and we both start laughing. He continues on and says, "Yeah, and she said the next time she sees you with alcohol, she's going to call the cops and have you arrested." I told him, "Tell her I said good luck with that and tell me how it goes." "You can't get me arrested for being an alcoholic in peace, Karen. This lady definitely needs a nice cup of mind your own business." Guys, I can totally see it now. I've read enough entitled people stories to know that she may start filing false police reports if she doesn't get her way, and she'll end up getting herself evicted. Next story. I work at a childcare facility, and we're open from 8:30 to 4:30. We have strict rules about these times. 4:30 is supposed to be the last possible time you can pick up your child, not the time you start showing up. So, we have a policy to charge every 15 minutes past 4:30, but we tend to be nice and not do that if it's a one-off thing and you're there before 5. We have a child with an entitled Karen who's often late, a lot. This year she's had to pay late fees over a dozen times, and she always fights it, saying, "I pay you to watch my son, don't I?" Anyway, this morning, she comes and drops off her boy and says to me, "I'm going to be a bit late picking him up today." Usually, with parents, that means they'll be showing up about 10 to 15 minutes after 4:30, which we accept. But I knew that this lady wouldn't be doing that. So, sure enough, I asked her what time she expects she'll get there, and she says, hopefully 6:30, but no later than 7. I have to do some Christmas shopping. I was shocked. She's been told again and again that 4:30 is the latest she can pick him up. I replied, that's not going to be possible. He needs to be picked up by 4:30. I told her any later than that, and she's charged. After 5:30, we call the police if we can't get a hold of her. She answers with, "But I have urgent Christmas shopping to do today, and you'll just need to watch him." I reiterate the policy we have, and she says, "You've said yourself that my son's a great kid. You should feel lucky to spend time with him. I thought you worked here because you love kids, or do you just do it for the money?" So, at this point, I'm starting to rage inside, but I can't yell in front of the kids. So, I smile, tell her again the policy we have on pickups, and tell her to speak to the manager if she doesn't believe me. So Karen laughs and says, "Just do what I pay you for and watch him," and she walks off. I tell my manager, who calls her after lunch to remind her that he needs to be picked up by 4:30, the latest. Apparently, she laughs it off and says she'll pick him up. So, we hope that's that. 4:30 rolls around and her son is now the only kid here. We keep him entertained while we clean up, and she's called but doesn't answer. By 5 o'clock my manager calls saying that if someone doesn't answer the phone or come pick him up, we'll have to call the police. We try the emergency contact numbers, but one is a friend that's already out of town for the holidays, and the father doesn't pick up. We wait a bit because having the police here will upset the boy, but by 5:30 we don't know what else to do. I call once more and she finally answers. When I tell her she needs to come collect her son now, the conversation goes like this. Karen says, "I told you I was going to be late." I told her, and I told you that wasn't going to be acceptable. You're lucky we haven't called the police already. Karen says, "Don't you dare threaten me. You knew I was going to be late. I told you I needed to do Christmas shopping." I told her, "That's no excuse. You need to come get him right now, or we'll have to call the police." And Karen responds, "You really know how to ruin Christmas, don't you? I just wanted to get some presents." I told her, "Look, just come pick him up now." So with that, she hangs up, and at around 5:45 she pulls up. The manager tells her that this was serious, and she'll have to take it to the board to see if they're going to take it further. So, yeah, Karen loses it, saying we've ruined Christmas, and that she could have all of us fired. She also says that her family is used to the very important person treatment in this town because her husband makes a lot of money, and she's disgusted that we don't understand that. To top it off, when she's asked to leave, she grabs $10 out of her purse and says, "Here, I've paid for the extra time. Get over it. He's an angel to look after." I really dislike people like this who don't understand that people who provide services also have a life outside of their job. Expecting a daycare to watch your kid for an extra 2 hours after they're closed just so you can do some shopping is absolutely super duper entitled. If he was such an angel, she should have picked him up and taken him shopping with her. Next story. I'm a 16-year-old guy and I'm pretty normal. I play video games, hang out with friends, and have a good job. I do all that, but the only abnormal thing about me is I have type 1 diabetes. I've been diagnosed for about a bit more than a year and a half. I've kept good control over it, and the doctors are always impressed when I have a checkup. Bragging aside, I'm a junior in a pretty small high school in the middle of Kansas. One of the things I do is take insulin 10 to 15 minutes before I eat, so it has time to take effect. Now, with the school lunch, there are two options, a chicken salad or a cheeseburger. I decide to go with the cheeseburger. I take my insulin and go up the line. There are two separate tables, each with two white to-go boxes with food in them. I grab a box from the left table, and before I take 2 steps, my friend points out to me that that's the salad. I set the box back down and go grab the other box, but the lunch lady shouts at me and says, "Hey, don't you dare!" I look at her, and she looks at me like I just slapped a puppy in the face. I asked, "What's wrong?" She says, "You already grabbed the salad, so you have to take the salad." Note, I did not even open up the box. I explained to her that I'm a diabetic and I took insulin. She shakes her head and in a sickly sweet tone says, "I'm sorry, that's not my problem. Take the salad and go sit down now." I tried once more to tell her the situation, but she just pointed at the salad table and tells me to take the salad or I don't get anything. I'm a little upset at this point, so I take the salad and go to my table with my friends and tell them the situation. They removed the vending machines from the cafeteria over the summer, so there was no way for me to get the correct amount of carbs without stealing another kid's cheeseburger. One of my friends tells me that I should go to the principal quickly before the insulin fully sets in. I go to the office and tell the principal and the counselor the situation, a little panicked because it had been well over 10 minutes since I took insulin. I'm very tight with the principal, so he walked me back up to the cafeteria and talked to the lunch lady. He tells her, "Lunch lady, give him the cheeseburger. He really needs it." She responds to him by saying, "But he already took a salad. He can deal with it." The principal just sighs, grabs the cheeseburger box, shoves it into my hands, and tells me to go sit down. So I go and sit relatively close to the lunch line so my friends and I can barely hear the principal talk to her. He said, "How you acted was truly out of line. You need to understand that you need to treat his and other diabetic kids' situations with care and understanding." He went on for another minute and ended up just telling her off and heading back to his office, and I ate in peace. I'm glad she got told off, and maybe she'll know better next time. I wonder why that was such a big deal to the lunch lady that OP swapped the box that they accidentally grabbed. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, right? You grab a box, it's the wrong box, and you should be able to put it back. I wonder what sparked her to snap at OP like that. Next story. So basically, there was a little girl in my son's class. They're both 5th graders. She would say that my son was picking on her. At first, we believed the teachers and her and would discipline him at home. But his story was always consistent that he wasn't doing it. And he started gathering witnesses who confirmed that he was not picking on her at all, and there were never people corroborating her stories. The stories also, frankly, didn't sound like him or anything he'd do. So I asked around, and his classmates said it was her picking on him and the other kids by pushing them. We also learned that she had put a love note in his backpack, and he didn't notice it and left it crumpled in there for a few months without being addressed. It was right around the time that she sent it that the accusations of him really started. Now, you would think that this story would end with just a few calls to the principal and the parents, but it didn't. The girl's mom started showing up at school to stalk and stare at my son during breakfast, lunch, and dismissal. She also tried to get him kicked out of the sports team he was on, and the mom even sent letters to the other kids' parents, saying that my kid was a horrible kid and they shouldn't let their kids play with him. She would also spread the same thing by word of mouth. I felt completely overwhelmed because I worked and did not have the ability or relationships with the other families to correct this craziness. I also tried talking to the Karen mom directly, but she denied that her daughter could possibly make up stories, saying that this is not how she raised her. She also denied stalking my son, as that would be crazy. I read the letter that was sent to the other parents, and she acted like it was totally normal for her to do that. Then, one day, she brought along her much older son to breakfast, who physically attacked my kid. When the principal told her that this situation had gotten out of hand and she couldn't bring her older son to school to intimidate students, she declared that she was going to start homeschooling her kid instead. My son is starting a new school tomorrow, and he keeps asking me if any other moms will do that to him again and if I will ever go to school for lunch to make sure no mom stalks him. I keep thinking about the situation like, what the heck? So OP does leave an update, and the update reads, "A lot of people say that I should contact a lawyer or press charges for the stalking. I'm a lawyer, and in all my communications with the mom and the school, I used all the magic words to let them know that I was serious about this. I also filed a formal complaint with the school that's well documented. I also consulted with several friends from law school, one who works in educational law and one who handles restraining orders and stalking, but sadly in Texas, there's no way a complaint like this would have been taken seriously. Even though this is completely bananas, the level of harassment they want to see is quite high because the judges are very sensitive to violating anyone's rights with a restraining order or prison. And while my son was physically attacked, he was not beat up or injured. I explained this in the comments, but basically, the older kid used his body to intimidate him while making comments like he was small and he needs to stop messing with his sister. Now, if it happens again, that would be a different story given the history, but hopefully, now he's starting a new school, and we won't ever have to deal with this family again. This is such a crazy story, and it got more and more insane as it went on. It totally sucks that OP's kid now has a fear of this happening at a new school. I also can't believe the woman got her son to basically come and intimidate and attack OP's kid. That was definitely crossing a line. These stories are a wild mix of entitlement and satisfying comebacks, echoing the Karen-driven chaos and revenge tales you've shared, like the brother-in-law's house swap or the Quiznos free food demands. And I'd like to share my views. These stories are a wild mix of entitlement, insanity, and satisfying comebacks, and I'm hooked on the audacity and clever responses. The mountain bike trail story infuriates me. Karen's goal to childproof a private trail by destroying jumps and cutting trees is beyond entitled. It's vandalism. I've seen neighbors overstep, but this is next level. OP's cousin staying calm and threatening police was perfect, though I'd have called them. Restoring the trail took effort, but Karen's retreat was sweet justice. The Flightlight saga is peak Karen nonsense. Demanding I turn off my reading light for her kid's nap on a 6:30 p.m. flight? Absurd. I'd have kept it on too. Her racism and tantrum got her nothing but a worse seat and a delayed exit. The flight attendant's upgrade offer to OP and the old lady's shut up shout, iconic. Karens thrive on making scenes, but this one backfired. The airline compensation story is heartless. Demanding a refund after a pilot's death? I've dealt with selfish customers, but this guy's cold insistence is vile. OP's sharp retort about the pilot's family was deserved. His threats to bash agents and post online? Pathetic. The supervisor's firm stance was a win for decency. The alcohol complaint story is laughable. Karen policing OP's private drinking in their own building? Mind your business. I've had nosy neighbors, and her threat to call cops is delusional. The landlord's laughter and OP's good luck quip were perfect. She's the one risking eviction with that attitude. The daycare late pickup is infuriating. Expecting staff to stay 2 hours past closing for Christmas shopping? That's not how it works. I've worked childcare, and her very important person claims and $10 toss are entitled nonsense. The manager's threat to escalate was spot on. The diabetes lunch incident is maddening. The lunch lady's refusal to swap a salad for a cheeseburger despite OP's medical needs is cruel. I've managed health conditions, and her not my problem attitude is reckless. The principal's intervention was a relief, but she needed more than a talking to. The bullying mom story is unhinged. Stalking a kid and sending her older son to intimidate? That's abusive. I've seen school drama, but this is extreme. OP's legal savvy and complaint were smart, though Texas's high bar for restraining orders is frustrating. The kid's fear breaks my heart. Karen's actions were monstrous. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our Entitled People series. If you enjoyed your time with me today, hit that like button. And if you missed the last episode of Entitled People, check it out if you haven't. I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.